Hey, Angela.
Hey, Brian.
How's it going?
Good. So we got Gypsy coming up.
Gypsy. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I love it. I love the overture. I love the story. The characters are so vibrant and so unique. And, we've been talking over the past couple of days about our favorite Mama Roses, because it's been done so many times, from the original with Ethel Merman to the movie with Bette Midler and so many things in between and after that too. Who's your favorite?
Yeah, so definitely my favorite is going to be Karen Robb. I've seen enough of her Mama Rose that she's going to be at the top for sure. But I have been doing a lot of listening. We have done a lot of listening in the office, and I then went through all of them. I deep dived. And I think that my favorite, and it was really surprising to me, was Imelda Staunton. Cannot tell that she's British when she's singing. And I watched a lot of her on film. She was in Much Ado About Nothing. She was in Sense and Sensibility, my top 10, The Crown,
Come on,
all the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah.
So I thought of her more as an actress than a singer, and it's really great. I like her pacing. I like how there's an intensity, but it's still really a human portrayal. Rose has been through a lot with her kids, and she really wants things for her kids. And then she ends up at this point in life where she's like, but what about me? Which I think is a pretty normal feeling. And so that she's my favorite. What about you? Who's your favorite?
When we started researching the show again, and you could easily find the Bette Midler movie, and I love the Bette Midler movie. I think it's so great, and she is so wonderful as an actress. I mean, we all know her as a singer, and so she has the great vocals, but also her nuanced acting, I think, in the film is so great. And what's also fun is that I did the show twice, and the lady who is the Electra in the movie. So I did the show with her once at Paper Mill Playhouse, and she was fantastic then too. Anna McNeely of the Broadway. But I think Bette Midler is my favorite. It's interesting because it's been played by so many people. Patti LuPone and Ethel Merman and Bernadette Peters and so many people. And I did it once, like I said earlier, at Paper Mill with Betty Buckley, which was a whole extravaganza, and I have lots of stories. If I could, that's a whole podcast in itself. And Debbie Gibson was Louise. And,
oh wow!
I mean, it was fascinating. It was a great production, and Betty's voice was out of this world, and she was a great actress. Very dramatic. Very dramatic. Which only put the cherry on the top of the entire experience. More about that later. I love this show, and I think, Karen is going to be so fantastic. I've only heard legend after legend after legend about this performance when she did it in 2010. Is that right? And everyone was like, you're going to hire Karen Robb again, aren't you? And I was like, I think there would be mutiny in this town if I didn't. And what was funny, though, when we did the holiday show, and I was driving one day, and I heard this song, and I knew Karen was going to be playing a part in the show that lives at the North Pole with her husband. But I thought, how do I get that song, Everything's Coming Up Roses, into the holiday show? And I thought, well, maybe if Rudolph needs a little help with his fear of flying, that we could change it to Everything's Coming Up Noses. And she sang that to me, and I can remember standing on stage as Rudolph. Yes, I was Rudolph. And thinking, looking at her going, oh my God, I cannot believe what's coming out of her mouth. It was so amazing. And then I thought, Brian, wake up. You're on stage. You're Rudolph. You have to play a part too. You have to play a part too. And so it was great. So I'm excited to hear the whole show through her experience. Right.
We were listening to the original Broadway cast recording in the office the other day, because that's all we could convince Alexa to play for us. And that was Ethel Merman. And it's so interesting because, Ethel Merman was singing before microphones on Broadway, right? So there's that, she really had to project. And it's not beautiful sounds.
Right.
And it reminded me, that's one of the things I love about the musical theater art form, is that the story is really important. What are we trying to communicate is the most important thing. And I come from the classical music world, where a lot of times the first thing is make a pretty sound, and the second thing is what are you trying to convey? So I love hearing these singers, and a lot of them worked with Sondheim, and a lot of them played Mama Rose, like, Elaine Stritch, Angela Lansbury, where like, it's not beautiful sounds,
right,
but you're getting often this like really incredible diction, like you really understand what they're trying to communicate. So it was fun, like going back to like where, like to the beginning and listening to that. I know like we should definitely talk about Richard Sabellico, our director, and his experience with the show. And I know that he worked on the Tyne Daly production. And if you're somebody like me who grew up with Tyne Daly on Judging Amy and are not as aware of like the stage star, like you got to YouTube those videos because she was so glamorous, and like you there's so many aspects of her that you don't see if you saw her on Judging Amy. So I really enjoyed her, like the edge to her voice. I liked that a lot.
Yeah,
too.
That's so funny because I knew her from Cagney and Lacey, which is because I'm older. And so I didn't know either that she was a musical theater star person. And then I was like, what? And she's so unique in her delivery of this role and her vocal stylings. So Richard put her into the show, and then Richard also was in the show with Angela Lansbury. So he has, one of the reasons I've known him since 1997 when I was in the ensemble at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, where I did another version of Gypsy that he did not direct, but Kiss Me Kate, I think he directed me in. And then later he cast me in the State Fair National Tour, Jennifer and I both. And he is the only one still living with all of these memories and stories from Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the show, and has all of this firsthand knowledge. And that was part of the reason why I wanted him to come here to do this, was because he does have all of that. He can tell you why that line is in the show, because he was there when they put that line in the show, or hear from Arthur, like why it's there. And so, and he's already like through the audition process, and then, production meetings on Zoom that we've already had before rehearsal started. He, peppers those with stories, and I just sit back and go like, and this is why, folks, I wanted him to come and do the show, because it's a history lesson that you can't get from reading a book, because it doesn't belong in a book, or it doesn't live in a book anymore. It's right up, it's up in his head. So, and he, I said, now Richard, we have your version of the story, which is of the script, and then sometimes through the years the scripts get changed a little bit, and there's a little additions or whatever. And I said, we have to go on with the script that's licensed, and he's like, well, it's all in my head. I can say every line. And I was like, I know you can. And so he's just the encyclopedia of Gypsy, and it's so exciting. But going back to what you were saying about this character of the show, the characters of the show, and the interesting voice types, because the story is so dramatic and in depth, and the character of Rose and Louise, all of them, honestly, are so well written and emotional, and really about the human experience from a really super organic place. It's like the singing is the last element of it's really coming from the acting. And so, that's why the voices aren't always the best, because these actors are so good. Or that's not that they're not the best, but that's not the focus of it. It comes from the intent from inside, and it helps inform what the sound is, right? Because it's so emotional and so visceral. And that's probably why I like also Bette Midler so much, is because she is such a great actress, but she also has that great voice on top of it. And, it's really a great, and you can see it on Broadway HD.
Yeah. Well, and I'm definitely interested. I'd love for people to like if they do their own deep dive, to like comment and tell us who they liked and what they liked. And it really, like, different actresses have told really different stories.
Yeah.
Like I when I listened to Patti LuPone, I was like, oh, she's really like, during Rose's turn, Rose becomes unhinged in Patti LuPone's performance. And like, that's not like an insult. Like, she was clearly making that choice. If that's what she wanted Rose to happen to Rose at that point. And then you have some people, and Bernadette Peters' version is so different because her vocal quality is so different, and she brings something totally different. So it's just really interesting to listen to them all back to back, and with such classic songs. It's just we don't get that experience that often, but thanks to Spotify and YouTube, we can just really kind of see everybody who's done it and what have they done and what do you like. So.
Yeah, and Richard's thing about the show is that everyone in the show just wants to be noticed. June wants to be noticed. Tulsa wants to be noticed. Louise wants to be noticed. Herbie wants to be noticed. Rose wants to be noticed. And in the different tellings of the story by the different Roses, it's how does that actress who's playing Rose filter in I want to be noticed? And it's so dramatic based on who they are. And because they're so their roles are so iconic, played by such iconic actresses, that you can't help but bring all that history that if you've seen them or you know how they perform, that it comes through in that moment in the show. And you're like, oh, that's on brand. Yeah.
Well, this production of Gypsy will be on brand for Music Theater Wichita because it is going to be fantastic. So come see us.
Yes, it is. The cast is just spectacular with John Shear as Herbie and Darian Crago as Louise and Stephanie Ruining Shearer as June. It's really going to be a really spectacular production. So it's exciting. And the best overture all time, played by trumpeter, your husband.
Yeah, he is really excited about it. Yeah. He's really excited. We're going to be hearing a lot of that overture in our basement over the next several weeks.
So the show starts with the best overture of all time, but the show is really about Mama Rose and her daughters, June and Louise. And Mama Rose is the ultimate stage mother, and she just wants to get her girls on the vaudeville circuit and take them around the country and make them a star, because if they're a star, then she becomes a star. And she puts all of her focus on June first, and we see June as little baby June, who's a little child, and then we after the first 30 minutes of the show or something, they transition to the older versions of the characters, and June kind of gets fed up playing a 12-year-old, even though she's into her teenage years, and so she leaves the house, and it's kind of devastating to Rose. And Herbie is the manager who just wants to marry Rose, and Rose keeps pushing him off. And then June leaves, and Rose then decides to turn her attention to Louise, who's the other daughter, who she's made Louise play a cow and a boy in the act. And then all of a sudden, June is gone, so there's nothing for Rose to do. So she turns her affections or her attention onto Louise to make her a star, but Louise really can't sing, and she's not a great dancer, and she doesn't have all the things that June has. So while they're in the vaudeville circuit, vaudeville's dying, and they start going to some of the strip clubs and to open. And actually, the first time that Gypsy Rose Lee, who is Louise, takes the stage, it's here in Wichita at the Orpheum, right down the street. In real life, that's really what happened. And and that is really the story. We follow Rose going through her stage mothering towards June and then towards Louise. And then we watch Louise turn into this major star and become a worldwide famous stripper, and how it affects her relationship with her mother, and then how Rose really reacts to that. And the culmination is Rose's turn, which is at the end of the show, where Rose has just been she says that if I ever let what's inside me out, there'll never be a stage big enough for it. And then you see this number at the end of the show, and it is. I get chills just thinking about it. And it is something to watch. And, Louise witnesses it from the wings, and they come in and they kind of have a moment of understanding again. And it really is a beautiful show. I mean, the music is great and the story is great. And I think as hard as Rose is to kind of watch sometimes, there's a lot of identification that everyone can take with either June or Louise or Rose. There's a great monologue that Louise says at the end, and she's, it's really about accepting who you are and in your life. And I'm not the great actress, I'm a stripper, but but it's my life and I love it. And I be damned if you'll take it away from me. And and the girl playing, the lady playing Louise Darien is just fantastic. And it's one of the best monologues ever written for that age actress. Anyway, it's really
really
exciting.
relatable story, I think, because there are serious parallels to like sports parents and like those of it, like, and now with social media, like, and influencing and how that ties in, and just basically being a parent and wanting your kids to succeed and wanting good things for your kids, and how do you find that line between what you want for yourself and then what you want for them and what they want. It's all really complicated, which I think is part of the reason this show has stood the test of time so well, is it's still just so relevant, even though like this specifically might not be, there's the parallels are really strong.
Yeah.